Yo, Kyle Lowe here, and I've had the Canon R5C for almost 2 years now. And I originally got it with the idea in mind that this would be my perfect travel camera to take with me and film 8K 60 frames per second stock footage, essentially. And I've basically only taken it on one big trip to Amsterdam. And I took it in this configuration, the R5C with a Canon EF lens and the tilt-a-cage, this small rig kind of clamp, and a short USB-C cable to keep the camera powered so I can run it not only to use 8K 60 with lens control, but also just have decent battery life. And I've had this like soft fuel battery. It's pretty good. I also have a couple of smaller ones. Two of these from Excitrus. This lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours. This medium one lasts about 2.5 to 3 hours. And this big chonker that sadly has been discontinued, it was a like Amazon Basics 99 watt hour one. This lasts almost 6-7 hours. Similar to a full-size V-mount, gold mount, 99 watt hour battery as well. I really don't care for mounting the V-mount battery to the back of the R5C because then I lose my EVF. I might as well just have another C70 at that point. But that's sadly where it's been. This has been like my events camera. I put it on sticks. It's the wide shot, it's static wide. I put this 16 to 35 or this 24 to 105 and just let it get the wide shot because it can be in 8K or it can be in super sharp 4K. And then the C70 is the close-up. But I'm really missing out on the EVF. I love having an EVF. And this big body just isn't very incognito with this big old battery. I still wore it when I took it around Amsterdam. People were looking at me. I had it with the hand grip strap, and then I think I also had a neck strap with the Peak Design but it was not the incognito, you know, gathering camera that I was hoping it would be. In fact, when we went to Portugal this year, I took the R6 instead. The R6 Mark II has been a great travel camera because it has great battery life and still super sharp 4K up to 60 frames per second. It's oversampled from the 6K sensor. Mine luckily does not overheat, and I don't even need this double battery grip. I'm actually doing the Gilbert Tang method, and I have an air tag wrapped in paper tape inside of the second slot, and I still get great battery life. I was basically running around Portugal with a battery in the camera and another battery in my pocket, and I would just halfway through my day, I would swap and I'd make it the rest of the day. But Canon has released the R5 Mark II, and more importantly with it, they've released new batteries with it. This is the LP-E6P, and I just got 4 of them because I heard they really extend the battery life on the R5C. Oh, and another reason I really don't like running this camera in a cage is because if I wanted to use the ND filter that goes behind the EF lens, the cage and the battery block being able to swap between the ND filter and the clear filter. Big annoyance. Now the ND filter adapter version lives on my R6. And actually this is the Mikey version. I do still have the Canon one as well, but this one is much cleaner all the way through all the stops of ND, whereas the Canon one has a real weird blue shift at the end, and I couldn't tell much of a difference. It might be just a little bit warmer, might add a little warmth to the image, but it's a really good ND for a lot cheaper. So the Mikey behind the lens ND is kind of my run and gun one, and the Canon one is like, oh, I'm gonna do something nice, so I'll save it for a special occasion. My R5C and my 24 to 105 is still covered in some fake blood from the Evil Dead the Musical in Selma, and I don't want to clean it off. I kind of like it on there. So I've seen some comparisons. And I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to turn on the R5C. I've got the LP-E6H in here, and once it boots up a little bit, it's going to tell me at 24 frames per second or 23.98 frames per second, I get 58 minutes of battery life, which is not bad. And I don't even have it in low power mode. I don't really care for the low power mode because I do like being able to turn up the luminance on the back screen when I'm outdoors. In low power mode, I can only do the 0 luminance, but I'll go to +2 for outside, and I'll even stay on +1 inside. So I don't like the low power mode that they added in a firmware recently, a number of months ago. But the big power drop is when you switch this camera to 60 frames per second. So I'm going to change the frame rate from 2398 to 5994, and check out my battery status is going to change. Okay, it was 58 minutes, and for about 55 minutes when about the time I changed the menu setting, and it immediately lost 25 minutes. It's now 30 minutes on this LP-E6H. I charge it to 100% right before recording this video. So 60 frames per second, no matter your frame size, 60 frames per second eats up the battery on the R5C. So now I want to take out the LP-E6H and pop in one of these new LP-E6P batteries. The camera is still in 60 frames per second. It's booting up. It's calculating our new estimated time. We're getting 48 minutes instead of 30 minutes at 60 frames per second, which is great. And now let's switch back to 24 frames per second. We gotta wait for the estimate to change. We're at 48 minutes for 60 frames per second still, but it'll just take a moment. It'll jump up, I think. 78 minutes. So I'm also gaining 18 minutes on 24 frames per second, which is great. So some people are like, well, why not just buy an R5 Mark II? Watching other people's comparisons, thanks to like Josh Satin and Points in Focus. I forget your name. I'm sorry, bro. You make some great videos, and they got their LP-E6Ps way earlier than I did, and basically did this comparison. They didn't necessarily compare between 24 frames per second and 60 frames per second. I think a lot of people don't realize that the two different frame rate settings, and 30 frames per second is basically the same as 24 frames per second, but most people don't realize that the biggest hit in battery life for the R5C is jumping up to 60 frames per second. Okay, but why not get an R5 Mark II? From what I've seen from these other folks on YouTube, is that the R5 Mark II doesn't really have many more benefits over the R5C, especially once you put the new batteries in the camera. Case in point, overheating. The R5C, I have never had it overheat. The original R5, I have had overheat in my experience with it. Not that I ever owned one, but I feel like I got a fair amount of experience with it. And the R5 Mark II still overheats. I recently chatted with Jordan Polmano. He's got an R5 Mark II, and he says that thing still overheats if he's not careful. And he doesn't have the new battery grip at the bottom to put two batteries in and have a fan, but it does appear that even with the fan, your run times can be a little limited. The other thing is we have C-Log 2 in the compressed formats, and it doesn't seem like you're getting that much more dynamic range once you convert your Canon Log 2 to Rec 709 or versus the Canon Log 3 down to Rec 709. It's relatively indistinguishable. And then 8K 60, I'm gonna shoot that in RAW, and I can translate that RAW file as Canon Log 2. And again, we're getting very, very similar dynamic range. It's not like we're getting like a whole stop or multiple stops over the R5C. So for me, already having an R5C, it made more sense to just spend $300 on 4 more LP-E6P batteries just to get better battery life, still not overheat, and still get pretty similar dynamic range, like less than a stop difference. I also just really like the Canon Cinema operating system. I'm so used to it on this and the C70. Sometimes I grab my R6 Mark II and I'm just like, why can't I change? Where's that setting? And it's not in the photo only version. Granted, there are a couple things that the photo version have that the Cinema operating system doesn't have. It does have better autofocus in the R5, R5 II, and the R6 Mark II, because it's using the algorithms from the photo version of the operating system. But in terms of a lot of other quality of life things, clean HDMI out for streaming and not losing the built-in screen, and anamorphic modes, because I do have the 3 SLR Magic anamorphic lenses, really keep me on this operating system over just the photo operating system. And false color in Canon log, for whatever reason, my R6 Mark II will do false color, but not in Canon log. I have to be in Rec 709. Very weird. Okay, so here's the other test that I want to do that I haven't seen someone else do with these new LP-E6 batteries and the R5C. I want to put my dual battery grip on the camera and see how long my run times will be, so I can calculate about how long I can actually run with this camera, like on a trip. I'm going to turn the camera off, take the battery door off, take this battery out because it's been in for a couple minutes. I've got 2 other freshly charged LP-E6Ps. Take my AirTag out. That is the one thing. It's like, it's really nice having an AirTag in here and have peace of mind that if somehow my camera got swiped, even inside the camera, I'd have an AirTag. Not just in the case, but actually in the camera itself. I've seen some people who have made body caps and lens caps that have AirTags in them, but having an AirTag inside the camera, having it taped down inside the battery grip where people probably aren't going to check right away is really, really cool. Very good peace of mind putting an AirTag in the extended battery grip. So theoretically, I should be able to double 78. So what is that? 156? 156 minutes with 2 batteries in here, 2 hours, over 2 hours at 24 frames per second. But I should also get, I forget what I said, for 60 frames per second. All right, 2 batteries in, camera's booting up. What is our estimated runtime for 24 frames per second? 163. So it's not quite double. It never is, but that's why I wanted to do this test. 163 minutes. That is still 2.5 hours. That is amazing. That's glorious. And if I had 2 batteries in the camera and 2 batteries in my pocket, I would certainly be able to go all day walking around, because I remember to turn off the camera pretty well. This camera does boot up slower than an R5 Mark II or R5, but it still boots up relatively quick. If I don't turn it off, I can at least click on my media viewer, and this will cut down on battery drain as well. Look, if I'm on media view with 2 batteries in here, let's see, it's calculating my estimated remaining time. 343 minutes, amazing. So sometimes I just gotta remember to hit media. Now, I have complained about this before. If I hit media in the Cinema OS, I cannot press the shutter button, half press or full press, to leave the media menu. Whereas on one of the stills cameras, if I'm in the media view, I can half press the shutter and jump right back into shooting. I wish I could do that on the Cinema OS. So Canon, I don't know if anyone is listening, please implement that when I'm on the media page in my R5C, my C70, someday a C80 or C400, being in the media view and then half pressing or full pressing, like the C70, 80, 400 only have a full press. They don't have a half press shutter. Boots me out of menu and right into shooting, because sometimes when the action kicks back in, I'm reviewing something and I'm like, oh, I gotta catch that. I can just push the shutter and be ready to roll. Okay, I don't wanna sit on this too long. I wanna get out of here and I wanna see how many minutes I get at 60 frames per second. So I'm switching from 24 to 60. Whoops, I went into media mode. It's calculating my remaining battery time. So if I'm shooting 60 frames per second in the R5C, I get 100 minutes. I get over an hour and a half. So I could get 3 hours with all 4 of these batteries. That's pretty good. So if I was in, the next time I'm on a trip, I'm not exactly sure when my next trip is gonna be. Actually, I do know. I'm gonna be in San Francisco very soon, visiting SF MoMA. I think I'm gonna take this to be my little incognito camera. It'll just be, you know, around my neck with my Peak Design next rep. Here, it's in a bag right now. Maybe with a mic, maybe not with a mic. You know, without the mic really sells that I'm a tourist and I can get those real incognito shots. But here is one of the things. I'm pretty sure I still don't get 8K RAW at 60 frames per second with lens control with these batteries yet. Let's confirm that. If I go to frame rate, or I am at frame rate 60 frames per second, I'm going to change my record format to raw light, and it is telling me the lens does not work with the current recording setting and the attached power source. So I would still need to attach a USB-C power delivery power bank to get autofocus and image stabilization from this lens. But it appears that a future firmware is coming very soon to the R5C, not like multiple months, but like days, ideally days, that will allow the R5C to work with these LP-E6P batteries to record 8K 60 with lens control and without the need of an external battery. That is amazing. I hope that we get that. It's literally the day after, and the firmware just came out for 1.0.9.1, and I can now switch to 8K 60 frames per second with the LP-E6 in, and the autofocus works. It's awesome. So I'll put a link to the firmware update in the doobly-doo. So I still love this camera. I love the EVF. I love being able to put a camera up to my eye and being able to make adjustments real quick. I love being able to have a small camera relatively and be relatively incognito when I'm walking around a city, when I'm traveling and capturing stuff that could become some pretty sweet stock footage. Because I don't think there are a ton of people uploading 8K 60 frame per second stock footage at this time. And I think because this is one of the few cameras that can do it, this and the Z8 and 9. Does the new Alpha 1 do 8K 60? I forget, the Alpha 1 Mark II. I didn't read all the stats on that one. But this camera is really close to becoming my travel camera once again. It's much lighter than the cage and the battery clamped on, and I'll be able to use the internal NDs, although I should probably start upgrading to RF glass soon. You know, the CF glass has been great. It's treated me very well, but again, I was hanging out with Jordan Polmano and got to play with his RF glass, and it's just a lighter, smaller package, which is great. Again, trying to be more incognito, and I do already have screw-on ND filters for the front. It's not that big of a deal, but if it ain't broke, no need to replace it has been my motto, so I'm sticking with it. So what do you think? Are you an R5C owner? Are you considering an R5C in the year of our Lord 2025? Are you gonna get these LP-E6P batteries? I hope Canon just starts providing them with the R5C. That would probably be the best thing. Or what do you want me to test with these batteries or this camera or the R6 Mark II? Leave a comment down below. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace.